From all the NLP techniques out there, which one is the most effective or the most useful one you need today? I think first of all we can define or dissect the NLP techniques into two main categories. The first one is all the language techniques, the language patterns like sleight of mouth, the Milton model, all the influential patterns to convince people to buy something or to change their limitation. And you have all the brain techniques, all the internal states techniques, all the things to change the neurology from the inside. At first we could make a distinction between those two, because is it really more about language or is it more about handling your internal states? Think about that for yourself. There are so many ways to adapt your level of skills into every NLP technique there is out there. However, what I found out from 10 years of experience is that all the language part of it, all the language techniques, the language patterns, all the frame control strategies, all of that, you will just not be able to use it at the right time if you are feeling depressed, if you are feeling low, if you are feeling super sad or like completely unmotivated. You will just not have the mental acuity to fire all those patterns fast enough. Like Bandler says a lot, when you want to make people change, you go into an altered state yourself, and then that's how you make them shift their own state. All the language is just a vehicle to go from here to there. From here to there, right here. It is just the vehicle, it is not the actual engine. The engine is how do you feel? The classic term for this also, the classic rule is you go first. When you want to influence others, you go first, and you are the one who has to make all the state inside yourself so that it is being implemented into the person you are interacting with. So if we first decide from those two categories, more language skills or more internal states, specifically if you are a beginner, for example, or intermediate, and you're not really sure about like what should I focus on right now because there are too many NLP books and too many skills. Honestly, if you're not a master already, or if you're not at least advanced into handling your own state, your own emotions, your own sense of your own focus, your own consistency, your own motivation levels, if you have no clue how to do that, definitely start there before going into all the language patterns, all the frame control, because all those things will be 100 times easier if you can already be in the right state, grounded, confident, and relaxed at the same time when you are interacting with somebody. Then all those language patterns, the sleight of mouth, the Milton model, the hypnotic suggestions, all of that will just come to you fast, rapidly, and naturally if you're already in a confident or at least grounded, assertive, relaxed state of mind. Among the most classical techniques to change your own state, we can find the whole area of submodalities that you may have heard about if you have been reading about NLP or watching some videos or even went into an NLP training. And by the way, that is my beef with many NLP trainers, because I have seen so many of them who were effective or efficient at teaching those skills, but when it came to a problem in their own life, not many of them could actually handle it. A few, obviously, a few of them are good, but so many so-called trainers or professional trainers or expert trainers, when some tough shit happens in their life, there is nothing they can do. Like they're just caught up, they are caught up in stress, and like, and I'm like, this is supposed to be used first in your life. That is the whole purpose of all of that, of NLP. First, use it into your life, and then if you want to become a trainer and transfer your skills, why not? But start with yourself. So many people are not competent at all into changing their own state of mind, handling their own internal states, and acting accordingly. So to come back on the topic of submodalities, it is the first main big thing we can elaborate when it comes to changing your internal representations. However, submodalities are mostly going to be used to create long-term changes. Things like the switch pattern, or when you want to plant a new behavior, all those things are usually going to happen on the long term through repetition, or maybe just 2 or 3 times, but it's going to be habits built up on the long term. What is the most relevant, I think, when it comes to changing your state right away is anchoring, obviously, but there is a way to use anchoring to change your state as fast as possible, no matter what kind of stress you are going through at any given time. If you just do the classical way, the typical way of using anchoring, which is, for example, touch your finger whenever you remember a positive memory, and then you will have this accessible whenever you touch again, you feel the memory again. Yes, that can be used if you are into a session with a client and you want to make them change. That can be enough. But when you want yourself, with your own limitations, that we all have limitations in our lives, some context, some scenarios or some people that trigger us more than usual. When we are confronted with those extreme situations, at least from my experience, I could be wrong, but just this alone is not really that likely to work. What I found out is what's going to work is a chain of encores. A whole chain of encores, not just one, but multiple ones. If you stack up many encores and you encore all the modalities, so you encore something visual when you think about a picture, something auditory, so you think about a phrase or sentence or a song maybe, and you have the kinesthetics, so maybe if you're trained into kinesthetics you can notice where the movements are in your body, or if you don't have that efficiency yet, you can just use the breathing and breathe as if you were into the state you had been into at some point. That was really resourceful. You need to combine all those three together, and smells and taste. If you have some acuity into those senses too, but just the visual, the auditory and the kinesthetic feelings are already huge. If you can combine those three together, so bring back a visual picture of what it feels like to be in the right state, the one you want to be into. If you combine that with a song that evocates this, or a phrase, maybe an affirmation that is really linking in yourself some strong sense of purpose or whatever it is, and the kinesthetic, the breathing, like you breathe as when you were there, you combine those three together and you do them, for example, once every morning for 7 days, then you will have your chain of encores, and what you are going to find out is that the first one is going to trigger all the other ones. For me specifically, the auditory is always the one that is triggering all the other ones. I used to have a way less auditory capacity than visual and kinesthetic. I was not really aware of the sounds, all the voices in my head, so it took way longer for me. And there was a theory from Milton Erickson or maybe Bandler who said, I think it was Erickson, who said that the modality, the sense you are the least aware of is the best one to get yourself into trance. I think it is true. I could be wrong, but I think it is true. At least for me, since the auditory is always the one I was the least aware of and the least efficient into using, like playing with the voices, I was never really capable of doing that. So now that I have trained into that, just remembering a song or a phrase and hammering it in my head consciously is really allowing myself much more easily to get into a specific state if I link it with some breathing and some image in my mind of what it was I was living in that moment or what I want to accomplish. It is always bringing all of that together, and then all of that is a chain of encores. So I can use them at will whatever the situation is, and the more you train, build up this chain of encores, and the easier it is going to be to use them even in highly stressful situations or situations where you are into the unknown, when you are just clueless about what to do. And one big habit I would encourage you to develop, only one thing to bring back from this video, develop the habit of being comfortable into being uncomfortable. Any kind of situation where you challenge your comfort zone, just take the habit of going into it. Especially if you're young and you haven't really built anything yet, it can be harder down the road when you're like 45, 50, because if you have a whole life built up of insecurities, it can maybe take a bit longer before you can unload or change all of that if you haven't started in any way any sort of NLP change pattern before in your life. But take the habit of going into uncomfortable situations, because down the road many things that are uncomfortable will appear super easy for you. When most people are behind and just complaining and feeling insecure because they can't do this or that, for you it will feel like whatever, because you will have been building up those encores into those situations. And from there, the possibilities are like way higher than what you probably have in sight right now. The first time I set goals for myself, I achieved them in like 8 months, and then I was like, if I have been able to do all of that, then what else can I do? And I developed goals the second year that I was not even aware I could set 1 year before. So when you develop this chain of encores into situations that used to challenge you or used to frighten you or used to make you feel insecure or like an imposter, and you use those encores of highly resourceful states into those situations, then you will just build up the habit of being extremely at ease into extremely uncomfortable situations. From there, the world is yours. If you want to learn more, there is my book in the description and a few other links, and you can still watch the other videos if you have some more questions.